And it seemed to me that Jesus was placing his hands on my shoulders, standing with his arms behind my back. I distinctly felt Jesus' two long, strong hands, which were embracing me and shaking me a little, drawing me to himself in a hug of love. And I saw his sweet, majestic smile. Then, last night, before drowsiness set in, when I was already feeling it come upon me, I had a vision of the Virgin and Jesus, but an adult Jesus, as he was at his death, still in his white clothing. Both of them were dressed in white, but Our Lady's dress was a silvery white, like a lily's, and the veil as well, just as she was in the visions at the grotto, whereas Jesus' attire was an ivory white, like woolen cloth. I was able to compare the two bodies and the two faces carefully, as they were close to each other on the right side of my bed. Jesus at my side, Mary on his right, towards the foot of the bed. Mary was shorter than her son by the whole height of his head, so that the Virgin's head reached the shoulder of her son, who was very tall. She was much thinner, whereas he had broad shoulders and a body which was entirely robust without being fat. The shade of the face was an ivory white. Only the lips were accentuated in their colour, which stood out from that colourless colour of the skin, and blue eyes. Light in the Virgin, darker in her son, and larger. The eyes of a dominator, but so gentle. Lighter hair in the mother, brighter in the son, but still a blonde tending towards copper, and equally delicate, soft, and forming waves, which in Jesus ended in curls. In Mary, I don't know, for the veil allowed me to see only the hair over her forehead down to her ears. I don't know if it was loose, braided, or pinned at the nape of the neck. In both, the face was an elongated oval, slender without being bony, more delicate in Mary and smaller, for it was in proportion to her body. But the forehead, nose, mouth, shape of the cheeks, and contour of the eyes, with smooth eyelids, appreciably lowered over the eyes, were the same. It was, I repeat, only that Jesus' eyes were bigger, and their gaze was that of a dominator. Mary's hands were extremely white and minute. Her son's were more virile, and the skin was darker, but the hands of both were markedly tapering in shape in relation to their width. Jesus and Mary looked at one another from time to time with an indescribable love. Mary looked with an adoring love. Jesus looked at his mother with an infinite, venerating and protective love. Grateful, I would say. And I would also say that they were speaking to each other with their gaze and their smile. They would look at me and then at each other. I saw the movement of their heads distinctly. Then everything was effaced in drowsiness. But when I recovered awareness, the first thing I saw was my two loves still in the same place. Then, since I was alone in the dark, while the others were eating or talking, I don't know, in the dining room, I carefully refrained from letting it be known that I was awake. I put up with heat and the need to be moved, I felt pins and needles all over, to savour the sweet vision in peace. With my half-numb hands, I took my rosary, which was lying on my breast, where I always put it when I feel myself being overtaken by sleep or a collapse, and I began to say the rosary, the sorrowful mysteries. When I'd barely begun the invocation of Fatima, quotes, Jesus, it is for the sake of your love, for the conversion of sinners, for the Holy Father, and to make reparation for the offences committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Jesus, forgive us our sins, preserve us from the fires of hell, and take all souls to heaven, especially those most in need of your mercy. When I barely begun the invocation of Fatima, I saw the two look at one another, beaming with mutual love. Beam is the right word, and barely expresses the radiance of the two faces. Then, when I said the mystery of Jesus' prayer in the garden, Mary's face looked at her son with love and affliction, and she took her son's right hand, which was hanging at his side, in her little hand, and kissed it with supreme veneration. And she did the same at each of the 5 sorrowful mysteries. The grace of that act was indescribable, as was the gaze which Jesus lowered over the bent head of his mother as she kissed him on the back of the hand. I did not see the stigmata, really, if I must state the truth. Even when I saw Jesus in agony, I saw blood on his hands, but never the open wound. I thus cannot say the exact point where it is located. Afterwards, the people in the house came and disturbed me. I continued to see, but I was disturbed in the peace of contemplating. I had the face typical of when I see, and Paula realised and said, "How beautiful we are tonight." I then worked because I felt happy. I put together the cradle Jesus wants. And then I felt ill with heart trouble and had a tremendous crisis which is still continuing. Life and joy rush into me with excessive violence, and my extenuated body suffers therefrom. But I'm willing to die with that vision. Oh, you can bet I'm willing to.